Hi everybody, Dr. Andrea Scott with Write, Speak, Relate here, and I wanted to take a couple of minutes to tell you my new plan and to encourage you. So my plan is to begin teaching some Bible study on my YouTube channel. And what I'd really like to do is teach you that you can study the Bible without a Bible study book, without some Bible study leader telling you how to do it and guiding you through the process. Because really, there's a tool online that has everything you need. And I want to encourage you that you are smart enough and strong enough and you have the time that it takes to learn what the Bible says for you so that you can be empowered to become a person who follows what the Bible says, that follows the leading of God in the Bible, and that you can do this on your own. There's no timeline. There's no number of weeks that you need to commit. If you have 15 minutes a day or 5 minutes in the morning, that's plenty to just do a little bit. And then the next day you go back and you do a little more because it's all at your own pace. And so that's the freedom of really being able to do this on your own. So I realize I'm in a strange setting in my car here, but I have a farm and 4 dogs and 2 teenage sons and a husband. And so this is truly the quietest place in my life right now. So this is where I'm going to do this today. So I use Bible Hub as my resource tool. There are some other ones as well. You could use Bible Gateway or Blue Letter Bible, and they all function pretty much the same. Some of the buttons will look a little different, and some of the terminology for the resources will be a little different, but for the most part, the content is the same. So this is the one I've been using for the last 8 or 10 years. I find it the easiest to navigate, but again, that's probably just because it's what I use. So this is the homepage when we go to BibleHub.com, and we'll talk about this blue and gray, these blue and white and gray sections here, but I wanted to scroll down a little bit so that you can see the tools. So it might be helpful if it's possible for you to pull this up and do this alongside me so that you can be walking through it and then pause as you want to investigate things further. So there's a timeline, which is super helpful when you're doing Bible study. There are reading plans. If you're not used to reading the Bible, you're not sure where to start or what to read when, reading plans are a great place to go. We'll get to the topical tool in a couple of lessons. There's a study Bible that gives you additional information, which is always real helpful. So sometimes I read, my physical Bible that I use is a study Bible. So every verse that has something relevant that we might need to know for added context is included there. So that's a really helpful way to read the Bible. There's also an area of measures, so you can learn about the different measurements that are used and what they mean today. There are daily devotions that you can look at, and one of my favorites is in there. And so it's nice to go in there and just look at those devotions. If you only have 5 minutes, that's a great place to go. And then you can see that there's even more extensive list somewhere. So if we click here, we know that there's different languages that are offered. And then this is a more extensive list of other languages and the different Bibles that they offer and the different things that you can look up. Commentaries and notes and more sermons. And so I find the list a little overwhelming, so I typically stick with this section here. So that's to get started. So now you know what's on the homepage. Again, we'll talk about these items in just a minute. So I'm going to go to my favorite Psalm, and that is Psalm 139. And I read this at my grandmother's funeral. I love this psalm. So you'll see here, this is the Berean Study Bible version of this. If we click here on the blue speed bar or tab, we can find NIV for the New International Version, the New Living Translation, English Standard Version, Berean Study Bible, King James Bible, New King James, and that's my personal favorite, the study Bible I was telling you about, that's in the New King James Version, the New American Standard Version, Amplified Bible. This is probably my favorite Bible that I don't own. So the Amplified Bible is nice because, as you see here, it puts descriptions in brackets of various words so that you can have a much clearer instant understanding without needing to go to a separate section to read commentary. Christian Standard Bible, Holman Christian Standard, Contemporary English, the Good News Translation, which is similar to the Message Bible, not quite the same, but similar. Peshitta Holy Bible, American Standard, Darby, Dewey Rhymes, and the English Revised Version. So those are the versions that they have right here. I'm going to jump back over to NIV. I think that this is a version a lot of people are familiar with. If you've done much Bible reading, most of my friends tend to use the NIV. So let's read through Psalm 139 real quick. So this says, "You've searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you. If only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting." So this is one of my favorites, truly one of my favorite Psalms, and it reminds me that God is always with me. He's behind me and before me. He's next to me. He knows where I'm going, and He's there before me. So He knew me before I was ever born. He knows the number of hairs on my head, which is shocking because in perimenopause, my hair's falling out like crazy. So He also, the psalmist says that if we were to count God's thoughts of us, they would outnumber the grains of sand. So I don't know about you, but I live near the ocean. And so I realize that I'm very blessed. I'm literally 12 miles from the ocean right now. And so I have the blessing to go there fairly frequently. And whenever I go, I'm shocked by how much sand there is. God's thoughts of us outnumber the grains of sand, not just on my beach in Central Florida, but all the whole world. And that's not just sand on the beach. That's sands in the deserts, and in Florida, my soil is sand. That's unbelievable. Like, I don't know that my thoughts for God outnumber the pieces, the grains of sand that end up coming home with me from the beach, much less all the grains of sand in all the world. So when I read this, I'm reminded how much God must absolutely love me to have that many thoughts toward me. So I really like that. This is a Psalm of David. So this is the David of David and Goliath from the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. So if you haven't read them, I strongly encourage you to go read them. And again, you could go, I'll show you when we're done here. We'll go back to the beginning and I'll show you where you can find them, or you can look right from here. So on this page, though, just to show you, there's a map of Jerusalem and the larger area, and then there's actual pictures. There's some artwork of David as he writes the Psalms, and so I don't typically look at those items, but you can. So if we look at parallel, so we looked at this blue bar here, and that told us the different versions of the Bible. If we look at parallel, this is going to give us verse by verse. So Psalm is the book, 139 is the chapter, and then this is the verse numbers. So this is verse 1, and it's going to compare all of the different verses from those different translations. And we can ask for more translations as well here. I don't typically go beyond there. And so, so then we can also look at the context. So we can see where this verse fits into something larger. Where does it fit into the larger context of the Bible? Where does it fit into a larger, the larger story of God's love for us? And then there's other cross references here. So in terms of searching our heart and knowing everything about us, we find that that's also referenced in Romans and Revelation and Genesis and 2 Kings and Job, and then in another psalm. So there's lots of other places that we can find out about God searching our hearts. And then some other references here in Treasury of Scripture, which is really just another compilation of basically cross-references. So that's parallel. If we want to look at some sermons, well, what do some people, some pastors and people much smarter than us have to say about this? So there's these sermons that we can take a look at. We can read through them. This one is The Divine Inspection by R. Tuck, is just from verse 1, and then the rest of these reference all of Psalm 139. And then there's sorry, I'm getting distracted from something outside. From Psalm 139, verse 1, there is this lesson, and then it continues. And so you can find more continued on below. So if you just want to read about Psalm 139 and some of the verses, you'll find them all right there. Let's see if I think I just clicked something I didn't mean to. There we can go. All right, so sermons. Topical takes us to, I'd actually like to go back to verse 1. So look up here at this top, the very, very top. We can quickly jump around. So I want to go to 139, verse 1. Okay, so now we can go to topical. I clicked somewhere I didn't mean to. So this is where it'll tell us topics that we can do more research on. So we can look at David the psalmist. It has to do with where he was in Jerusalem. So we can look up about Jerusalem. Topics of verse 1. He was the choir chief, the choir master, overseer. We can look up Psalms, searching, secrets of our heart. This is an outline of Psalm 139. And then these are different themes, and I'll explain these numbers mean something in particular. So we can also look over here and find different themes that we might want to look at in more detail. And then we can click them, and they will take us to Strong's, which is a Bible concordance. So a concordance is the part of the Bible that tells you where every verse is, or every reference is to a particular word. So in this case, if we wanted to look up God as all-knowing, that's going to be Strong's 1020. So another way we can get there is by clicking on Strong's. So it then breaks down the header part that told us who wrote about it, that they were the choir master. It's going to bring you to different Strong's Concordance verses. Parallel Strong's, meaning the different ways that the words in the concordance are being translated by different Bibles. So if you took time at the beginning of my video and kind of clicked around with the different versions, remember we went into Psalm 139 verse 1 and we saw that list of all the different ways that Psalm 139 verse 1 was translated. So they're saying that there's lots of different ways. Those words, based on which translation you're reading, might end up as a different Strong's cross-reference. And then again, more parallel verses, so similar verses. And I was hoping to get to the one that we just saw on the previous page. So let me go back. So we clicked on Strong's. Nope, not what I wanted. I usually use my iPad for this. And I'm sorry to click around so much. All right, so let's go back to topical. This was where I wanted to be. So let's look at God as all-knowing. Okay, so this is Strong's 1020, God as all-knowing. And then this is from the Dictionary of Bible Themes. And so we can see what it means to be all-knowing. We can find out where those references are. It defines what it means to be all-knowing based on where these things are in the Bible. So it takes us to different places so we can really learn about what it means. And then these are synonyms with the Strong's concordance number over here also. So that we can begin to really delve into what it means for God to be all-knowing or omniscient. So if we go back, maybe my back button will work here. Okay, now commentary. This is commentary from various people, so not necessarily pastors, but Bible scholars who write about the Bible. And so in this, they expand on what's written. Some of them are easier to understand than others, quite honestly. And so I will tell you, I like Ellicott's a lot. I tend to use Ellicott's a lot. Pulpit commentary is usually pretty good. Matthew Henry's is usually pretty understandable. There are some other ones that are pretty, Gill's is usually pretty good as well. That one's a little bit more difficult, but if you go slow, it's usually you're pretty able to understand it. So the commentary is the place where you're going to get lots of added knowledge because these people are Bible researchers. So they know the context and the history and the word histories. So that's really where you're going to find a lot of good information. Interlinear, this is when they're going to bring up the different languages, or they're going to tie back to Strong's. That's the Strong's number right there. It'll give you the part of speech and whether it's masculine, as well as whatever the original language is. So I don't use this one very often because there's other places that I can find this with additional information. So I don't use the interlinear very much. Psalms are part of the Hebrew Bible. So here we go to Hebrew. We get a similar thing as we just had on the last page, a similar presentation, but I find this one just easier visually for my eyes to comprehend. So if we click here, we'll get the Strong's entry that we saw before. So let's look up, "You have searched me." So this is Kakar, and it's number 2713. So if I were making note of this in my Bible study journal, I'd put S.2713. It's a verb, and it means to search. And then we see here that from the NASB, the New American Standard Bible Translation, we see that it also means all these other things. So ascertained, examines. The number is how many times the NASB uses this word kakar as this word. So the NASB uses kakar as ascertained once, examined twice, find, found, investigated, to make a search, pondered, probe, searches, sees through, sounded, or taste, which I think is interesting that there's that last one. And then there's more description. So this is Brown Driver Briggs' explanation of defining this Strong's word to search. And so usually if you look through here, you can find the verse that you've looked up. So if we looked real close in here, we would find Psalm 139, verse 1. And so right here. So it is a thorough search of man, right? And so accusative. And so we can look that up a little bit further if we want to know exactly what that means. But we understand, right, that God is searching us. And that could be accusative, right? That he could find something in us that's wanting, which I'm positive he does every day with me. So that is how we use the Hebrew. If we go to lexicon, this is similar to the Hebrew page. So again, we see the beginning, the origins of the word in their original language, as well as then translated into English. We've got the Strong's Concordance again, and then where the word comes from, the root word. And that was under lexicon. And then multi, I don't use this ton. Again, I find this information somewhere else. So this is a lot like the parallel readings. This kind of combines parallel with the Hebrew. So I don't typically use the multi very often. So one more thing I want to show you, and then I'll end for today and tell you where I'm going to go next. So if we look at summary, this tells us about the Psalms in general. And then it gives you kind of a breakdown of what Psalms are. If we go to outline, we can see that there are technically 5 large books that are broken down, that break down all 150 Psalms. And so we can gather more information by clicking on them. Timeline tells us when everything was written. So I love knowing that these are not written in the order in which we read them. So we can read from Psalm 1 to Psalm 150. They were not written that way. So the oldest Psalm is 1,407 years before Christ, the Psalm of Moses, and that's Psalm 90. So we can find all of our Psalms represented in here at various times. So if you want to read them from chronological order, this is where you'd go. So you'd start here, and you could start reading with Psalm 90, read it, and then click your back arrow, and then come back to Psalm 59, which was David's Psalm of Deliverance, etc. The 3 B's are looking at this at a glance, and so we can kind of get the broad brushstrokes of the Psalms from looking here. Parallel Study Bible will allow you to do some translating. It's going to give you, this starts at Psalm 1, so if we wanted to go back to Psalm 139, we would click up here. And then it would take us verse by verse with the English Study Bible and the Hebrew Study Bible so that we could learn a little bit about them and see that they're all linked to different places. So that's what we can do there. And I don't do that one very often because I get the parallel readings in other places that I showed you. Treasury of Scripture Knowledge has lots of cross-references and related verses. Again, I don't always use this because there are other places I find this information. Bible Hub is great because there's lots of, there's good information in multiple places. So it's not like you're trying to find one tiny little seed tucked away somewhere. You can find it in multiple places, which I think is great. The Apostolic Bible Polyglot, I will be totally honest, I never use this. Again, in part because this looks a lot like the lexicon we saw on, a couple pages ago. And so the combination of Hebrew and English and Strong's and all that kind of just is not visually appealing to me. So I don't spend as much time there. But please take a look and see what you can find. And I just clicked right there. So you can kind of go back and forth. And then this should be the lexicon. So again, you're going to have some translation. You can do Google Translate here from Greek to English. Again, not something I use the most. I'll be honest, I typically go between my versions and then I use this here. If you've never read a particular book of the Bible, though, then you should by all means check out the summary and the outline and the timeline. So I did reference King David, and I wanted to show you where to find his story. So if we click here, we'll go back to let's click there. So that'll take you to the different books of the Bible. So if we go, this is just New Testament here. I'm trying to find out why it doesn't have Old Testament. So let's go here to 1 Samuel. And I want to go to NIV just to get us back to something that we know. So this is Samuel. If you click these little right and left arrows that bubble up when you highlight over them, I'm going to kind of scroll us quickly to I'm not getting where I need to go. I'm so sorry. Okay, so here we go. So Samuel, I knew I was getting there. So Saul was king and he was displeasing God. And so God tells Samuel he's going to go anoint someone. So if you want to learn about King David, the David of David and Goliath, and the David that wrote the vast majority of the Psalms, you'll start here in Psalm 1:6 in 1 Samuel 16. So I encourage you to start reading here. And I would encourage you to experiment with the different versions of the Bible and find one that you like the best, because there's no right answer. Each one of them provides something slightly different that is more understandable to some people than the other. And if you love the Lord and you know God at all, you know that He'll make it clear to you. And so maybe if you've been trying to read the Bible over the years and it's just never clicked with you, it could be that you're reading a version of the Bible that just doesn't connect with you. And so, as you can see, there's lots of them. So my plan is to, now that I've sort of introduced the Bible Hub app, I hope that you'll take a look at it and you'll do some clicking around, find some things that interest you. I'll do little kind of offshoot looks at some of the various options. But my plan next is to move to a word study of hospitality. So I'll be honest, it's not my strength. My husband is very hospitable and he would like to open our home a lot more and entertain, and it doesn't come naturally to me. So I think that I'm probably not the only person. Particularly, I was an introvert long before COVID, and so I know that it will serve me well to learn to be more hospitable. So if we do a word study, we'll learn what it means to be hospitable and how we can implement that in our lives. And I will look forward to meeting you here again. For more information or to learn more about me and what I do, please go to writespeakrelate.com, and I'll see you here next time. Bye-bye.